Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Codentech. My name is Shibam Dhar and I bring you Tech Weekend series. To support my channel, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. In case if you like the video, please make sure to share it with your friends. Today with me, I have Miss Rubleen Kaur. She is a data structure and algorithm enthusiast. She is also the co-founder of Jigsaw Mind community. And in this video, she is going to take you through the path of programming languages, that why you should learn programming languages, why you should code, and how to start, and many more things, along with some hands-on on C++ programming languages. So make sure to watch this video till the end.
Hi guys, so I am Rubleen Kaur. I am the co-founder of a community called Jigsaw Minds. We started last year and we have attained around 30 to 30 plus colleges with us, and we regularly have sessions on cyber technology, cyber security, and different domains of technology. So also, I just completed my internship as a cybersecurity intern at Gurugram Police. Moving on, today's topic is about how to start with programming and the basics. We'll cover the basics of programming languages C++. So moving on, the first question most of the people ask is, what is computer programming? And just a small introduction, it is a step-by-step process in which you can design, develop, and you can code various sets of computer program, computer instructions to accomplish a specific computing outcome. For example, in a layman's term, you have used these computer programming codes since you were a kid while you were playing with a robotics car. What this car does is you used to use the controller to move it left and right, and then you used to have a desired output and the car used to turn around accordingly. Now, if you want to achieve a similar kind of thing in computers, if you want to write a code that will add two numbers, you just need to know a very simple syntax, and you can easily create that program. So, what is the basic elements that are needed in programming languages that are very necessary you need to know? The first and the most important is you need to have the programming environment. If you're starting with C++, you can have a very, you can have a compiler, and that be all. You do not need to install anything else. But if you're starting with Java, you need to have a proper JDK platform. You need to install it correctly, and you need to ensure that there is no error while the installation takes place, because Java will not it will not allow you to run a program if there are errors while even just setting an environmental variable in your system. The second thing is you need to know the data types which are being involved and which are being used in that programming language. For example, we'll be talking about C++ today, and while we are coding, we'll use some different data types such as char, such as integers, and float and double. So we'll talk more about them in the further session. Next thing is variables. So variables are keywords which you use in the programming language which are defined by the user. Now there are different types of there's a difference in variables and keywords. Variables are something you define, and you can use any, like you just need to know the syntax of defining a variable in a programming language. Suppose if I'm talking about I need an integer, I'll just say integer a, and I can simply use that to store a number. Similarly, moving on, a is the variable and integer is a keyword or a data type here. Now, what is a keyword? Keyword is something that is predefined by the system, and you just need to write it in the, you just need to include that in your program. We have logical and arithmetic operators. Then we have some conditional statements such as if and else. We have loops, and we have user-defined data types. There are two types of data types. First is predefined data types, and then we have user-defined data types. Predefined data types are integer, char, and float and double, which are predefined in the compiler, and these are just given for the programmer to be used. Now, if a programmer needs to store multiple data using a single variable, we use our own defined data types, and these are called arrays. Moving on, we can also use functions, and these are all the basic elements of a programming language. Now, how would I know what is the application of this programming language, or how will, if I am starting with a programming language, how will I know if it's the one I need to use, or if this is the one I need to learn? There are certain applications of these computer programming language, such as if I want to learn Python. Python is widely used in AI and machine learning. It is used for web development and internet development, and it is basically it is a very easy language to learn. You just have to know a base. It's the easiest language in right now, and it is used in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Then we have Java, and Java is used for developing mobile applications. It is used for web applications and for storing big data. Now we have JavaScript. Now JavaScript and C++, they both are used in game development. JavaScript is also used for mobile and web development. But C++ on the other hand is a competitive programming language. Like if you want to run your programs at a faster pace as compared to the other languages, we use C++. Now, C++ also supports graphics compiler. That is, you can inherit major graphics in your develop like desktop UI. Like our Windows is basically built on C++, so you can imagine the load of the graphics C++ can handle. Then we have Go, which is a new language, and it is also used for graphic user applications and web applications. And I think I covered all of the programming languages. Then we have SQL, which is used to store databases in the system. Now, the next question is like, how can I choose the programming language? Like, these are so many languages I have at hand. How would I know that this is the one I need? Now, we have multiple programming languages that can help you attain a same, that can help you solve the same problem. Like, I can develop a game system using C++. I can also develop a game system using JavaScript. But I just told you that C++ is much faster. So C++ is used more in this domain if you want to develop games or if you want to run your programs at a fastest pace. So your skill is also important while you're choosing a like programming language. You need to be proficient in coding, and you need to set your domain. For example, I cannot choose C++ if I want to have a career in ML and AI. I should always go with Python, or I can even use R for the same. If I want data science, I can go with R. So yeah, that's how you choose your programming language. Now, moving forward, let's just try to code our first program in C++. Let me just share my screen. Now, a little bit before about C++ is that C++ was originally it's a upgrade of C language. C language lacked multiple, it had a very we did not had classes, we did not had a concept of oops basically in C. So C++ is just C with classes, and it's a if you see C and it has plus plus. Now what is plus plus? Plus plus is the increment operator which is used in C language. Now the just the name suggests that it is an upgrade of C language. Now we have different sets of tokens. And what are tokens? Tokens are the lexical units. Now it is the set of valid characters that a language can recognize. Now we have different sets of tokens in C++. Some of them are keywords. I just like define keywords. Then we have identifiers, we have literals, we have punctuators, and we have operators. What are like operators are the easiest one. You just know which operator to use. Like you have used plus operator, you have used minus operator. So these are the arithmetic operators we use in the language. Now moving on, Let's just code our first programming language. I'll be using an online compiler called Online GDB. You can just head over to this website and you can use the same. So I hope my screen is visible. Now, if you just open this website, you would find this keyword or a template program already over there. Now, I'll just explain what each and every line of this program means and what would be the output of it. So the first statement is hashtag include IOStream. Now, what does this statement means is I am predefining an IOStream. I am including this directory in my system, in my program that includes all the input and output stream functions. Now, moving on, I have using namespace std. So what like if you're a newbie to C++, the first and the most important question that pops up here is what is namespace? So namespace is a declarative region that provides scope to these identifiers. Now we have identifiers such as functions. We can have identifiers such as variables. In this case, we have identifiers such as OStream cout and iStream cin. What is OStream and iStream? These are the OStream and iStream are streams which are used for input and output. Now, moving on, this is the reason we use namespace as and the second reason is if we are already inheriting a you know directly in our program, why do we need this using namespace std? So namespace is needed because its functionalities like cout is used, but it is not defined in the directory. Like we have not defined, we are just like copy and pasted the program of cout and cin, but we have still not used or we have still not defined that we'll be using this in our program. So using namespace is included for that. Then we have curly braces. Sorry. Then we have the int main. Now, what is main? Main is a function that needs to be there in the C++. Like one main function is very essential in your program. So main is basically the beginning of my C++ program. The main function is point where all the C++ programs begin their execution. In fact, the content of main is always the first one which is to be executed in the program. And for the same reason, see, it is essential that all the programs in C++ have a main function. If you will not include a main function, you'll surely get an error. And please try to learn while, doing mistakes so that you be each and every error you have in your program will always may help you remember that if I do this in future I'll get this error. So try and coding with errors, you'll always learn something. Then we have the curly braces. Now this indicates the start of my program, and this curly braces are basically the scope of my main. Like my main function, all the keywords which are given in these under these scopes would just be only executed as a part of main. Everything else I write outside these curly braces will not be considered as a part of main. Now, moving on, I have the cout statement. What a cout does is it is an output stream, and it would show the user hello world. Now, the first program we do in each and every programming language is hello world. Now, so I just use this program. If I run or if I compile and run, I just see this output hello world. Now, this cout stream helped me get this output. Everything I use, everything I write in these strings would be just simply displayed as the output. And yeah, this is all that is the use of cout statement. We just use this output stream to get the desired output on this screen. So yeah, so moving on, you will see that we have this return zero statement. And what does this return statement does is that it makes the main function end, and it returns a value, and in this case it is returning zero. So returning zero is the most common way of telling the program that it has terminated normally. That is, it has not found any errors while its execution. Now, we have used this int function over here. Like, I use this int domain. Now, I just told you that int is a type of a data type in C++, and it stores, numbers. Now, if I have, if I would have used void in this case, I don't think the online compiler allows me to use void. But if you try, you can use void main, and void main, it is not necessary to have a return statement, because void means it is completely empty. It does not need to have any value, so you can have a void main function instead of int main. And the difference between void main and int main is that you will not be required to have a extra statement that is return 0. I hope this program was understood. And moving on, let's just try and code our next problem, and it will be like, let's just go deep into what are data types. We have three different data types in C++. The first one is primitive data type, and primitive data types are predefined in C++, and they're also called built-in data types, and we can just directly use these data types to declare our variables. So the first one we'll be talking about is integers. Like we just saw in the int main function, we have this int keyword. And now just see how much space does this int keyword takes. Let me just declare a variable called int a, and let me just store a value of 9. So what does is this allows me to store a value 9 in the variable. Now, if I wish to know the size of this variable, like how much memory is this, variable taking in the compiler, let's just try and using a C++ function size of. So I just go cout size of a is size of, and I just include a. I am not showcasing my value over here. If I want to showcase my value, I'll just cout a. Now let's just see the difference between the output, and yeah, I yeah. So you can see that size of a is 4, and I did not had an ENDL statement, so the 9 is printed just along it. Let's just try and throw a ENDL statement at the end of the here. So let's just run it again. Okay, so you can see now size of A is 4, and the value of A is 9. Now we have different compilers, and according to the different compilers, we have different memory which is allocated to each and every integer. If you used older version of C++, you'll get the int value or the size of int as 2, and it is okay. It's not that now it's wrong or this output is wrong. It just depends on the type of compiler you're using. Moving on, we have another type of data type, and that is known as char. Now, what this char does is char can help you store characters in a program. Why would we need characters? Suppose you're writing a program and you would like to store my name or your name in it. Now, I'll just use a char and I'll define it with including strings. Now, char is something like you can store only one variable. We can store a set of variables using char and a string. We can store that string and we can have an array of characters. So we'll be seeing this further. Now, let's just see what is the size of a character. Now, all I have to do is I'll just let me just comment this out, and I'll have a cat. Let me store. See, I can use anything as a variable. I can use I can literally use anything. So I will store R as a character. Now let's just see what is the size of this char variable. Now I have size of cat is, I use the size of function again. Now you'll be wondering what is the size of? How can I easily see that? Now this is a function that is already predefined in the compiler, and you just have to use this function for the desired output. Now I wanted to know that what is the size of cat, and also if you want to know which are the predefined functions, let me just show you a website. Like we can simply Google what are predefined functions in C++, and we can have all this list. So these are the functions which are predefined, and these are some of the math functions which are used in the C math directory. And what does sqrt does? Sqrt helps you to find the square root of these functions. Power helps you to attain the power. If you want to know what is the power of 2 raised to power 2, you can simply use this function power. Then we have apps, exit, and assert. Now, exit is also used. Exit is widely used if you use loops, and yeah, this is like you can see we have some programs over here in which they're explaining what is the functionality of each and every. This is the proper user sqrt power, and you can go and see the small helpful websites. So coming back here, we can have like I'll just type anything over here and ENDL. Now ENDL allows me to end this line and print something in the next line. So if I want to know what is the value of this anything, I just so I did a syntactical error over here. It's double. You just have to be very careful while you're coding, because each and every syntax error you make, the compiler will pop you with the error each and every time. So let's just try and run this program. See, the size of character is 1, and the character anything is holding this value R. So I hope this was understood. Moving on, we'll be talking about floats. Now, what is float? Now, we have like if I wish to attain a value such as in decimals, I'll use float instead of integers, because integers does not allow me to store decimal pointing values. So if I want to store floating point values, I'll use the keyword float to declare my variable. Coming back to the program, let's just so I just now I if you see I'm just commenting this out. Now what are comments? Like comments are something that are just defined to the programmer. Now if I write a program of around 100 page and I'm just leaving my job from a company, and I wrote a program that is about 100 page. Now how will the person who is coming like at my position and be using this program daily would know what I coded? Now I can simply code this, and not everyone will realize, like if I have just coded this, I would need a comment here. This is about the integer variable or integer data type. So this helps the programmer to understand what the code written below is. And comments are simply ignored by the compiler. So the compiler does not read the comment. You can have anything as a comment. So I just wrote this for character data type, and now I'll be having my flow data type. Let me just comment this out too and have my float data type. Now let's see how much this float takes the space in memory. If I have a float, typo, if I have a float A and I store a value of 8.90 here, now I wish to know that what is the memory that is being allotted to this variable. how much memory is allowed to this variable. Like char was just holding 1 byte of the memory. Similarly, integer was just holding 4 bytes of the memory. Now let's see how much bytes this float variable or float data types take. We have a simple CR and size of float is, we have the size of function and I write a. Okay, so you can see that everything that is being included in this set of statements or in this string is printed out, like is just exactly printed out. Each and every space, each and every colon, it be exactly printed out. So you just have to be careful for what we want on the output screen, and you just have to use the cout statement to attain the desired result. And now I just, if I want to know what is the value, I'll just write cout a. Now let's just run this program and see the size of float is also 4. I hope this is understood, and you can see that we know that zeros are always after a point, after a decimal point are ignored. So in this, the compiler also just showed 8.9 as the result instead of 8.90. So I hope this was understood. And the last data type we'll be talking about today is Boolean. So what Boolean does is Boolean can help you store statements like true or false. Now, suppose if I want to have a if else statement, like if I want to know if my user is above 18, he's able to vote, and if my user is not above 18, he will not be allowed to vote. Now, all I can do is I can declare a Boolean variable, and I can use that if this is the condition and if this set of statements is true, it is true. Like you can return true, like this user can vote. And if the kind of, like if the user is below 18, no, you are not allowed to vote. So hence it should return false. I hope Boolean was understood. If you want, you can run a similar program using a Boolean, or like the size of Boolean is basically 1, so it's not necessary. And initially, you are just like you should be just familiar with integer and characters, and that would be all. Now moving on, we have these derived data types in C++. What are derived data types? Okay, so first thing is if you want to store, suppose I am a teacher at a school and I want to store everything, like I want to store marks of my students in the classroom. Now suppose I have 30 students in my class. Now just see the hectic, or see the like see this is so much hectic task to declare 30 variables of each and every subject. Now I have 5 subjects and there are 30 students in class, so I have to declare 30 variables for each and every subject, and that would be so much of a tedious job for a teacher. Now C++ have helped us, and these are the derived data types which you can use in the program, such as arrays, and these are known as arrays. So arrays helps us to store a data type of the same, like if I want to store integers, integer and data type, like integer data type. Okay, if I want to store 30 variables, they can be stored all under a same name. So it helps us to store, and and these data types are stored linearly in the memory. So, and what does this mean is key after a of 0, and a of 0 is the standard way of declaring an array. Like a of 0 is the first element of the array. So if a is a declared array, a of 0 is always the first element that is stored. Now, if I want to know what size of array is there, suppose there are 5 elements, and I just told you that a of 0 is the first element. So we have elements such as a of 0, a of 1, a of 2, a of 3, and a of 4 respectively. in the array that is declared of size 5. Now let's just try to use an array and write a simple program in our code. Let's just try to have a sum of elements in an array, and we'll be using C++ as the language. So let me just open the program, and yeah, we just remove all this, and I'll just have this return 0 statement here. If I want to declare an array, I'll use int a, and let's just take 5 elements in that array for now. Now, if you want to have this a predefined, we can use two types of arrays. We can have arrays which are already predefined by me as a programmer, or we can have an array which can be defined like whose values can be input by the user. Now, how can I input values in an array? Like, how can I enter 5 times in this array? We'll be using a concept of loops in here to implement or to add values in this array. I'll use this for loop, and I'll declare. So this is the syntax of a for loop. I'll have an integer I which will start from 0. Then I'll have I that will be going from, it'll just have this condition that I should be less than 5. Now, an I should be incremented each and every time the statement is true. So in this, I'll have cin statement, and I'll have a of I. So what is this does is, now let's just forget about the sum of elements in the array. Let's just see how we can input and output an array. This loop can easily help you to store array elements. And how does this that for we have this for loop. So we just saw how to take input using a for loop in an array. Now moving on, let's just see how we can display this array and have the same array as the output whatever we give the input. Now we'll declare another for loop, and we can use the same variable I because the scope of this I variable has ended with this for loop. And as it was just defined for the sake of this for loop, I now can be reinitialized. Now I'm just reinitializing my I, and it will straight again go from I less than 5, and it will be incrementing by 1. So all I want is I just want the output, and I will add a bit of a space in each and every element. Now there's a return statement already there. Let's just try to run our program. So I'll have to enter 5 elements. I'm entering 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'll just press enter. You can see it took all these elements, it stored it in an array of A, and then the array was reinitial, like the array was just shown, the array elements were shown to you using this for loop. So you can use for loops when you have to read an array, when you have to display an array, when you have to perform any function of the array. Suppose I want a function or I want a program in which I want the output of the elements that are there in the array, and I want the sum of them. Suppose 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 and 1. So how can I do this? I have just read the array. Now all I have to do is I have to store I have to declare a sum variable, and let's just declare it with 0 because sum should always be initialized with 0, should not be initialized with any garbage element. And while I'm reading this array, all I have to do is sum should be incremented by the value of whatever is present in I. So, sum, it's this is the shortcut we use in C++, that is plus equals to, and this is exactly the same as sum is equals to sum plus A of I. So This statement and this statement are exactly the same. It is just a short code, or so we use sum plus equals to a of I, then sum is equals to sum plus a of I. And all you have to do is now we can, as the for loop has ended, we can simply return sum, and the sum would be displayed on the screen. Let's just try this out, and let's enter our elements again. So sum of 5 plus 4, 9. 9 plus 6 is 15. So I hope this program is understood. Now, this was all about the user-defined data types arrays, and this is just the beginning of the concept of arrays. Now, moving on, we have user-defined functions, as I was telling you. So I hope my screen is visible and the PPT is visible. Now, what are functions? Functions is a subprogram that acts on data and often returns a value. Now, if you see, integer main is also just a function. And while I was explaining you main, I told that this is the function and this is a driver function of the program. Now, what does we can also define a function. Now, the functions can be defined and they are just used for shortening the length of the program, and it makes the program handling easier, as just only a small part of a program is dealt with at a time. Now, suppose I want to input an array each and every time, and I want to input this 10 times. Now, suppose as I was writing this code, I have to write this short piece of code. I know it is short, but even then, I have to write this short piece of code 10 times. So instead of that, I can just declare an input function, and I can move this set of commands in that, and that function can return me the inputted array or whatever is stored by the user. So another reason we use function is to reduce the size of the program. I was just telling you, if I have to use this function 10 times, I have to write this piece of code 10 times. Instead of that, I can simply define the function, and that can just ease my work. Now, moving on, we have two types of functions. The first is the built-in or predefined types. The predefined types, as I was just we just saw the size of function. So size of function is already there defined in the compiler of a C++, and it just has to be used by the programmer. Similarly, we have an exit function which exits a loop. And moving on, the stretched out topic we'll be talking about today is user-defined functions. What are user-defined functions? These are the functions which are created by us as programmers, and these functions are built on like if I like the pro C++ didn't use key, we'll have to enter it's not necessary that each and every time only 10 elements of array has to be entered. Like only an array, only a function of input array is called 10 times. It can be multiple times. So compiler didn't have such functions. Now these can be moved by the programmer as per his or her preference. So moving on, what is like function definition? If you see, if I have a function over here and I can define it. First of all, a function is a named unit of a group or a program statements, and this unit can be invoked from any part of the program. For example, if I have 2 to 3 functions in my program, they all can intercall each other and they all can read each other's memory, and it's not that they can store in each other variables, but yes, they can read. If I can call in some function, I can give a call to read. If I can give a call of display. So yeah, I can use simultaneously as many as functions as I want in my program. And how are functions defined? We have the type. If we see in this int main, we have the type data type, and then we have this function name. Similarly, I hope I have a, just give me a second. Yeah. So we have this function of program to print cube of a given number using a function. Now, if you see, I have this float cube function in this program. And what this float cube has is this has a data type. It has the function name. You can have anything as a function name. Just make sure that is not already a predefined keyword. So you can use anything, but just stick to the rules of defining a variable. It's just defining a variable. It's similar to defining a variable. There are no sets of, there are just a limited set of rules you have to follow. You just have to see that there are not anything that's already predefined and is used by the compiler for some other purpose. So I have this float function q, and float a, float is the return type. As we're seeing in the slide, we have some definitions and we have some rules to define a function. So first is we have to define the data type, then we have the function name, and we have a parameter list. And we'll be talking about this parameter list. And yeah, in C++, a function must be defined before it is used anywhere in the program. Now, what does this means is I should declare a prototype of the program if I have to use it somewhere, and the function body or function definition can be given later. Moving on, we have this function prototype. Now, I just use this word prototype, but what is it? What does it exactly means? The prototype declaration looks exactly like the function definition, but we do not have the body of the function in the prototype. Now, all the function prototype is, it is the data type, it is the name, and it is a parameter list. Now, if I see in this program, I have, this is the function prototype. Now, I just used my function just in the scope of this main function. So that's the reason I just defined, or I just wrote my function prototype inside the main function. What if I want to use this cube function globally? There are certain set of scopes which are there, and we'll be talking about it later. Just a small introduction to scope is if I have to use a function and that function is to be global, that can be used by any set of program or any set of function calls. So I'll just declare it outside my main. Like I can declare this set of statement over here too. So this is the only difference this will make is this will be accessible to any part of the program, and this would just be accessible to the main function. And you can use only one of these statements. You cannot use this again and again. So I'll just comment it out. Now we can try and we can see how this program works. I'll just remove whatever is there. So yeah, it's just I'll just use this compiler as it's better to explain our program. All this function does it returns the cube of the given element a, and a is all passed by the main function. As the main function is the driver function, the execution will always take from the main function. As the compiler reads the first line main, it just straightly go and read this function. Then it will see that we have two variables which are float type, and these are taking 4 bytes of memory. Always remember which data type you use and how much memory will it hold in the memory. Okay, so I'll be using this compiler to explain the program. Before that, let's see how can we access a function and why is it important. So a function can be called or invoked or executed. We use 3 technical terms, and always remember you have to stick with the technical terms while you're interviewing for a company or while you're just giving a normal Viva exam. Always stick to the technical terms in the programming language. So a function can be called, invoked, or executed by the providing the function name, followed by the parameters which are sent along in the parentheses. For instance, if I want to invoke a function whose prototype looks like float area, float comma float. Now remember, we do not have to declare our variables in the prototype. We can simply, write the data type of the function, the name of the function, and the data type of the variables that are to be stored or will be provided as parameter in the function. Now, how will a function call look like? A function call statement will look like area of x comma y, where x and y are float variables and are just passed in this function for being executed. Now, these values of x and y will be used in the function. And we can see it here in our program that we have a float variable a. Now, whatever the user will input as x, like whose cube will be calculated is x. So whatever the user is input here as x will be passed in this function, and the value returned would be y, as we have stored the value over here. Now see, we used float as the data type of our returning statement. Now similar, and that's the reason we declared y as a float variable. Let's just try to run this program and enter the number of qubits to be found. Let's enter 3. Now you can see the cube of 3 is 27, and how it, like how was it executed was, as the compiler was reading the statements, it came across this cube of x. Now, if you see, I've declared my function global, so it does not need to be defined inside the main function. It is already global and it can be accessed anywhere in the program. So then the user was asked for an input, and we input 3. So this 3 was passed inside the cube function as an argument or as a parameter. Now then this cube function, as the cube function was called, the compiler went to the program and read the body of it and executed it. When the prototype was declared, the compiler had in mind that I'll be having this cube function somewhere in the program, and it will just see ki, is there a similar type of body associated with it. It would not execute at that point of time. It would only execute this cube function at the time you call this function. And this is the 3 different types of function associated things that one needs to keep in mind. The first is declaration, the second is the prototype, and the third is calling of a function or accessing a function. So I hope this program made it easier for you to understand that. Moving on, now you can see that I used a argument that was not default. Now, what are default arguments? I could have simply passed that I do not want my user to input anything. All I want is just show me the cube of 2, and this will return. Now, what happens here is, let me just add 2.0 to make it a floating point number. Now, if I try to execute this program, I'll have, okay, cube of x is not here anything and x is not defined. So just show me a garbage value, and that is 0. Now my x is 2, so I'll just simply define it here in this statement and try to run it again. So cube of 2 is 8. Now what happens here is, this 2.0 is a default argument. Now moving back to the statement, the default arguments are values which are specified at the time of function declaration. You can also define this as, float a, and a is 2.0. Now I have defined this at the time of declaration. I can also define a default at while calling a function. So see here, the default value of an argument is to be used only when its matching argument value is missing. I am not using any user defined function. Instead, I'm just passing this value as a standard input. We can also also have something like if I have a function of interest and this interest function is calculating the simple interest for me using the principal, time and float rate. Now, if I have this rate as default 0.10 in the program and I am not passing any input for this, like I am just passing the principal amount in time, the function would just read whatever the value of rate is by default, and this is given to me as 0.10, and the function would execute the lines of statements associated with it using the rate's value as 0.10. Now, for example, I want to update this value. I just simply pass 0.15 as the third argument list. Now, in this statement, no argument is missing. Each and every principal is also given its value, time is also given its value, and rate is also given its value. So these updated commands would be used instead of the default ones. Now, moving on, we can call a function by two types, and the first and the simplest one is call by value. Now what happens in call by value is you cannot change whatever is being passed, or you cannot change like whatever is passed as a in this function, it would not reflect back in the main function. The values would not reflect back. Suppose my x gets updated in the main function and this x is passed in the swap function. Now, if this x gets updated in the swap function, its value won't be reflected back in the main function. Only and only you can just return some value, or you can print some value in that. You cannot update anything that is associated with main while you're using simple integers and a simple call by value function. So moving to the definition, a call by value method copies the value of actual parameters into the formal parameters. That is, the function creates its own copy of argument values and then uses them. It will never use something and reflect back in main. Thus, in call by value method, the changes are not reflected back to the original values. So I hope this was clear, and this is a program which is used for swapping two numbers. Now, what is happening in this program is if I want to swap two numbers, that is, if I input 5 and then input 10. Now, if I want A to have the value as 10 and B to value as 5, all I'll do is I'll add A's value to B, then I'll subtract the value of B. Now, let me just copy this code and try to explain it by running it. Okay, so I just run this and there's some error. So okay, so yeah, I hope it's okay now, and there are no errors. Let's just try to run it now. Yeah, so we have two numbers as 3 and 4. And now before the swap, the values were 3 and 4. After swap, x is equals to 4 and y is equals to 3. Now, how did this happen was, I have used this technique of swapping without using a third variable. Now, what happens here is, I have passed my value of a, like here, two variables are declared, a and b. I have passed values as 3 and 4. Now, while you're reading the statement a plus equals to b, what happens here is a is now equals to what is b's value? B's value is 4 and 3. Now we have 7 in a. Now in b, what does this statement does is b is equals to a minus b. Now b will be equals to a is 7. Now 7 minus b. 7 minus b is 4. Now this will give me 3. And again, just give me a second. Yeah. And in this statement, I have a and a This value will be equal to a is equals to a minus b. That means 7 minus 3, and this will give me 4. Now you can see that how easily these values got swapped, and all we used were just plus and minus functions and nothing else. So this is the small mathematical concept, and you can easily use three variables. You can have a temp variable in which you can store a's value, and then at the end you can just replace these values. So I hope this was understood to you guys. And after the swap, you can see we have these value as 4 and 3 respectively. Now what happens here is if I try to uh, see out my values of x and y, x space y, you will observe that my values here remain unaffected. That means they'll still be 3 and 4. Let's just run it again and see. I have 3 and 4 here. And see, so before swap the values were 3 and 4. After swap the values only got updated in the swap function. Now what if I want my values to be affected back in the main function? I want to use the updated values for something, for suppose adding, or for suppose for suppose subtracting. Now adding or multiplication would give me any different results. Instead I'll use something like division or subtraction. Now what if I want to subtract something and I want to use the updated swapped values for that? We have the second concept, and we have second types of function. We have call by reference. So in place of passing a value to a function, in this case we create a reference to the original variable and then it is passed in the function. So the main thing to note in this is the values in the reference method gets changed and gets reflected back to the original values. Now this set of code is written, and this is exactly the same kind of code, but I've used the temp variable instead of the plus and the standard plus and minus technique. So we have this function called void swap, and now you're seeing something ampersand x. Now this ampersand is used to define a reference variable. There's a concept of pointers in C++, and we stick to reference for now. Pointers are different than reference, and like, just give me a second. So just close this tab so that it will be more clearer to you. Yeah. So now what you've done is we have declared this variable int temp. Temp's value is being associated to x, and simply x is being associated to y, and y is equals to 10. So we are just using these values, and the swap values are a, b. Now a, x and y are just printed out. Just let's just try this out and let's just see ki, how does these values get affected. Okay, so I just written this program while I was editing the PPT. Let me just. Okay, so C++ is a character. No, you cannot use like plus T, capital T, and small t are not same in C++. So just keep this in mind, and you have to make the desired changes if you use the capital T or small t. Also, I have this. I just update my program a bit, and then we'll try this out. In the meantime, the reference functions are functions which are using the memory, and it just creates a reference variable. Now what is reference variable? Just see if I've defined it somewhere. Uh, so what are references? References are made in the memory, and it is simple concept of, just open a notepad. And, Okay, so suppose if I have 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and these are stored in the memory somewhere. Now I want to create a reference of 1. In the memory, what will happen is we will have a block and we'll create a value A. Now what this value A as a reference would do is it will just have the address of, suppose 1 is stored at the address 8927 something, and we have 2 stored at address of something like this. Now as these are arrays, then just like they are stored linearly, so they'll be following a pattern. And I hope this is understood now. Okay. So we have 1 stored at 8273, we have 2 stored at 8274. Now what this reference A will have is, it will have this address 827. This does not mean that the value of this ampersand A is this, but yes, this in the memory it is pointing to this address. So what happens now is in the memory of int x, int ampersand x, what is happening is there is this reference variable x which is pointing to the memory of A. Now whatever changes or whatever changes I'll do in x will be reflected back in A, and hence these are used when you want your values to get affected in the main program. So I think I have completed. No, I still have to do some changes here. Yeah, in this program you can see I've been using /n instead of endl. /n does exactly the same work, and it is similar to what endl is. Endl means end line and /n means new line. So it's, you can use either of them when you want to skip a line in C++. Now let's just try to run this. I think each and every, yeah, it's just small here. I think it's updated now. Let's just try to run this. Okay. So what happens here is the original values are 7 and 4. After the swap, the values are 4 and 7. So you can see this after the swap was uh, here in the main function. So in the main functions now, the values are already affected and the swap values are seen here in the swap function. So not only just the values in swap function are updated, but also the values in main functions are updated. Now moving on, can skip this. Now we have the concept of scope I was talking about. Now what happens in scope is we have different kinds of scope variables in C++. We have local, we have function, we have file, and we have a class. So what is local space? Now suppose I have declared a variable. If you remember, I did declare a variable in a for loop. Now what did the variable in the for loop had? It was just a local variable that was associated just to the scope of that for loop. Now, what does this mean is that after the execution of the for loop, there was nothing like for I. Like I did not had any memory instead of just inside that for loop. So the names of the formal arguments are treated as if they were declared in the outermost block of that function. Now, what does this mean is the only and only in the for loop will that associated I would be declared and used, and after that it would have no memory of it. And then we have function scope. Now what does function scope means is that if I try to access this temp variable in main variable, I won't be allowed to, because temp is declared inside this function called swap and not in the function main. Now in the main function, temp does not has any value, hence I will not be able to see out it in the main function. Let me just try to see out, let's just see what happens if I try to access temp in the main function. Now if I run, you can see temp was not declared in this scope, and this is the error which we'll get if we try to uh, you know if we try to print some variable that is not defined in that scope. Moving on, we have a file scope. Not what is files in C++? We have files such as we'll be using. We can declare files that .baq files using iStream and offstream. So a name declared outside all blocks and function has file scope. That is, it can be used in all the blocks and functions written inside the file in which the name declaration appears. Moving on, we have class scope. So you heard me talking about classes in C++. In C++, we have class scope. Now, what if I declare a member in just a class, and if that class does not have inheritance property, the member would not be accessible by any other class. So this is what a class scope is. We are just covering basics of programming, so we'll not be talking about the OOPS concept right now. This is an image that declares that you can see all the scopes in this example. We have this directory. I have some variables for int x and y, and these are globally written. That means these are having file scope. Now, if I have this file and if I try to store this, you'll see that I do not have anything that's global. Now, just wait. I have this function which is global, and this can be accessed anywhere. Now, you can see that I have not, written the prototype of this function. Now, the prototype of this function wasn't needed because it is not just used in just one function, and its scope is not limited to this main function. It can be used anywhere in the program. I would have done one thing, that I would have just given the prototype globally and written the body somewhere else in the program, and that would have been completely acceptable. There would be no errors in that, and yes, that would have been done in that way too. There are many ways in which you can implement a concept. You just have to stick to your preference, what is what is preferred by you. So we have this variable temp, and you can see that this scope, this function is just used globally, and this can be used by any function that is being defined even after main. So that is something that is called as file scope or global scope. Now we have function scope of main, and what does this means is that I have this main function, and in main function I have int variables a and b and float amount. So these two just have this function scope of main. What does this mean is these are the local variables which are associated to just main functions. You just saw that I tried to access temp, and this temp scope was just local to this swap function. Similarly, if I try to access a and b inside the swap function, I won't be able to, because their scope is just limited to the main. If I would have not passed these values, swap would never have the right to access these a and b's in the function. Then we have a void check int L. Now function scope of check and the okay, so we just saw this, that function scope of x and y. If we'd have used a function that did not had references, the function scope would have been limited to just swap, as we just saw in the last example. Right now, swap changes the reference changes the original values. Hence, even though it is changed by a reference, and yes, it does not have the complete right to access these values. Now, if I explain this, like we had this function in the last function we were talking about, we had a and b, and we used the standard minus plus thing. Let me just try to have that function back. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So here you can see that this is also a global function, and it is defined before the main. So what does this have is a and b scope is just limited to the swap. Similarly, X and Y scope is just limited to main. So these are the global variables associated to these programs. I can also define a global variable, uh, suppose car, and its value is defined as 10. Now, if I want to input car in each and in any of these function, I can simply write car. Now, what does this mean? This has the file scope, that is, this can be accessible anywhere in the program. I can use car in either of these functions, in swap functions and in main function. So let's just try to run this program. I have input 3 and 4, and yeah, you can see that. Okay, so I guess I try to yeah, let me just remove the cout statement here and run it again. So 3 and 4. Now before swap, you can see the cout car, and we have 10 and 10 printed. Now one 10 is being printed in the swap and the other 10 is being printed by this main function. And I hope this concept was clear to you. So thank you. I hope you learned something in this session and the concepts were pretty clear. If you wish to connect with me, my LinkedIn is Rubleen Kaur 2201. My Twitter is Rubleen Hanjra. You can just ping me anywhere. I respond to people. If you have any doubts, you can even email me at rubleen16@gmail.com. So yeah, I guess this was all about today's session. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you like the content. And in case if you want to get in touch with the speaker, you can find their social handles in the description. And yes, thank you for watching. I will be back again with more content. Thank you.